Deadline White House with Nicole Wallace starts right now.
Hi, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in Washington, D.C., where it's been a whopper of a breaking news day. We're covering all of it for you. We start with the man in charge of the Mueller investigation, Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, and a hearing before the House Judiciary Committee that was both combative and contentious. Whitaker drawing a line in the sand today about his conversations with the president about the Mueller probe, and he did so after saying he wouldn't answer any questions about his conversations with the president.
Yes or no, at any point since that briefing, have you communicated any information you learned in that briefing to President Trump?
Mr. Chairman, I know that there is a unique and
yes or no
special interest in this. I'm sorry?
It's a yes or no question. Have you communicated anything you learned in that briefing about the investigation to President Trump? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, as I've said earlier today in my opening remarks, I do not intend today to talk about my private conversations with the President of the United States. But to answer your question, I have not talked to the President of the United States about the special counsel's investigation.
Whitaker also separating himself from other top officials, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and FBI Director Chris Wray, by refusing to refute the president's smear on Robert Mueller and defend the Russia probe.
Are you overseeing a witch hunt?
Congressman, it would be inappropriate for me to talk about an ongoing investigation.
Do you agree with the president's statement that the Russia investigation is a witch hunt?
As I mentioned previously, Congressman, I think it would be inappropriate for me to comment about an ongoing investigation.
Wow. But it may be Whitaker's bold statement that he hadn't spoken to Donald Trump about the investigation that undergoes the most scrutiny. Some Trump allies believed it was Whitaker's entire mission to end the Mueller investigation when he stepped into the role as acting AG. So it defies logic and reason to think that if landing the probe was his mission, he never spoke about it with the president, who is day in and day out obsessed with the Russia probe. Notably, Whitaker also refused to answer whether he'd discussed firing anyone from the Southern District of New York. That's where Donald Trump faces grave legal jeopardy.
I want to know whether you talked to President Trump at all about the Southern District of New York's case involving Michael Cohen.
Congresswoman, as I've mentioned several times today, I am not going to discuss my private conversations with the President of the United States.
So yes or no, did you?
No matter what the question is.
Yes or no, did you discuss with the President Trump anything about Michael Cohen?
Congresswoman, as I have expressed several times today, I am not.
Did you ever have any conversations with the president about firing or reassigning any personnel, U.S. attorneys or others who work with the Southern District of New York? With the president or anybody? Anybody at all? Did you ever have any conversations with anybody about reassigning or firing any personnel, including U.S. attorneys with the Southern District of New York?
Congresswoman, I sit on top of the Department of Justice, as you mentioned.
Did you ever have any conversations about anybody who works with the District of Virginia firing or reassigning? With anybody, not just the president, anybody at all?
Congresswoman, I am not going to talk.
Sounds like a hell yeah I did to me, but what do I know? We're joined by some of our favorite reporters and friends to help us sift through today's fireworks. Former Assistant Director for Counterintel at the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi's here. Former U.S. Attorney Chuck Rosenberg is back. With us on set in D.C., former federal prosecutor Paul Butler, NBC News national political reporter Carol Lee, and Sam Stein, politics editor at the Daily Beast. Big guns, all of them, for a big, big news day. Frank, I got to start with you. What was that?
Listen, I'm not kidding when I say I have interviewed terrorists who were more cooperative and respectful than Matt Whitaker was today. I got to tell you, I say that with sadness because the Attorney General role is America's lawyer. We are his client, and we're represented by the Congress members sitting in that room, and he treated us with utter disdain, sarcasm, you know, barely trying to get through this seriously. This is basically thumbing your nose at oversight by the people. And the way he conducted himself today is an indication that he's not America's attorney. He's essentially seeing himself as Trump's attorney.
So let me, Frank, put on the table some of my reporting from this week about both the preparations for today's testimony and some of what I understand to be Whitaker's goals today. One, there was a lot of preparation, but not for the reasons we might believe there to have been preparation. Whitaker was auditioning for another job in this administration. Whitaker had an audience of one, and that was Donald Trump. And Whitaker had as one of his goals to be the Sarah Huckabee Sanders of the Justice Department. On those fronts, does that explain some of what we saw?
It jives with exactly what we saw today. He's auditioning for something. I'm thinking that possibly we'll see him run for office at some point. But yeah, I do think Trump's going to position him somewhere else. But here's the thing. Let's put out kind of a cautionary statement to everybody. If you've got skeletons in your closet, if you've had criminal fraud allegations about your past and your private sector involvement, probably not the best idea to raise your hand and say, I want in on a Trump administration job. Because we've not seen the last of Whitaker. I'm telling you, the FBI, ironically, the organization he oversees in his current role, ironically, the guys and the women who protect him every day on a security detail, those are FBI agents at his house every morning, taking him to work, taking him around D.C. Those people belonging to those agencies are actually looking at him criminally, and he's not seen the last of the FBI. And anyone else who's got visions of being that partisan in secretary cabinet level roles needs to rethink their past before they sign up for what Trump is asking them to do.
There's so much here, Frank. I want to press on some of the substance of his answers, because I wonder if this statement that he offered today, and I know he wasn't, I don't believe him to have been under oath, but lying to Congress is in itself a felony. What about saying that he never talked to Donald Trump about the Mueller investigation? It just seems to defy reason if even Trump's allies have said publicly and privately that Whitaker's mission as acting AG was to land the Mueller probe. Whitaker's job before being acting AG was Sessions' chief of staff. He was put in that job, I understand, by former White House counsel Don McGahn after Sessions recused himself from the Russia probe to help filter some information back to the White House and the president. What are the chances, in your mind, Frank, that he never talked to the president about the Mueller probe?
It strains credulity to think that that kind of substantive conversation never took place. In fact, some of the longest pauses, if you look at his testimony today, some of the longest pauses, the point where you can see the wheels turning in his head, are when specifically he's asked about conversations with the president. And I think what we're headed to, Nicole, is likely this committee or others calling to testify the career officials at DOJ who helped prepare him for this testimony. What was discussed in that? Were there nuances? Well, you talked to the president, but no, you actually talked to an aide to the president, so you can say no if you're asked if you talked to the president. Those nuances need to be brought out. There needs to be transparency about this process, and I don't think these questions are over today.